You are listening to the Therapists in the Hot Seat podcast with your hosts, Tom Coates and Tom Holland-Pearse.
Hello and welcome to the Therapists in the Hot Seat podcast. We're the podcast where we try and demystify all things mental health and therapy whilst also having a little bit of fun along the way. My name is Tom Coates and as always, I'm joined by my colleague, Tom Holland-Pearse. Would you like to say hi, Tom?
Yep, absolutely. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're excited for our episode today.
Which is kind of like a session for us, actually. So it's.
I think we need it, actually.
I need it after the amount of intros I've just messed up. And for anybody who's eagle-eyed and watching, you'll have seen that we're also joined here by Elizabeth Spill. Would you like to say hi, Elizabeth?
Hi, Tom and Tom. It's lovely to be here.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. So Elizabeth is joining us today to talk about the topic of conflict in relationships. And Elizabeth is an integrative counsellor that specialises in relationship counselling and also bereavement. So she's very kindly offered time today to come and talk to us about what conflict is and how conflict can be very common, unavoidable, and sometimes even helpful if managed and handled effectively. Hopefully give a few tips as well as perhaps how we can handle conflict in our day-to-day relationships. So thank you so much for coming, Elizabeth. I wonder if we could start with you and maybe hear a bit about you and your background and what brought you towards working with couples and in relationship counselling.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Well, as you said, I'm now a counsellor and helping. Why I love doing it is to try and help people where conflict is something that they're suffering. Conflict, let's start with what conflict is. And what I'm talking about really is fighting and arguments between people. And what led me to the counselling is that I was a family law barrister for 11 years. And I saw conflict in families that, of course, by the time I saw it, they were then in the court process. I stopped being a barrister really when my son was young because I wanted to be at home more with him. And so I then became a magistrate for 15 years. Wow. And I was in the family law courts. And again, it was all about conflict. And I felt that the court system doesn't really help people overcome the conflict. It's a fight, really, once you get to court. So that led me into becoming a counsellor, where my aim is to try and help couples I'm talking about couples today. Obviously, I do all sorts of relationships. I do families. I mother, daughter, father, son, all sorts of relationships. But today I'm really talking about couples, whether they're married or not married. It's that two people in a relationship. So what I was really aiming for is to help them not get to the point where the conflict is so bad they're into court proceedings or really fighting, especially fighting over children.
Wow, it's so interesting. This was a surprise, isn't it? That is very interesting. So yeah, and it's a really good point, actually, the difference between a fight and conflict. I suppose the fight is the final escalation of that, really, I suppose, before court has to pull them apart and settle that difference. Wow, that's fascinating. So you've almost gone back closer to the root cause of what might end up in court in that respect.
Yes, trying to sort of get back to the beginning as far as possible. The earlier people can look into what is causing conflict in their relationships, the earlier they can try and resolve those issues. Hopefully it won't then become something that breaks them apart. And it's very, very painful for families particularly to break apart. We are all, as human beings, relationships are so important to us as human beings. It really is the core of who we are. And we don't want conflict in our homes. We don't want our relationships to break down, and particularly when there are children involved.
Wow, that's very interesting. Very, very interesting. I feel like we need another session just on your introduction. I've got a trillion questions for you, but we'll move on, of course.
Yeah, I'm really sorry. I just had to move there. It's typical. We start recording a podcast and people start mowing lawns outside. So sorry about that if anyone who just heard any disruption. I think that's fascinating, Elizabeth, the idea that you've seen it at that end, where you've seen the the fight, or I kind of had an image of when you were talking of sort of people sort of shredding each other with their teeth, trying to get to the children and trying to, get that custody battle and trying to get that what they deserve and those kind of things. So you've seen that and kind of almost been wounded by that. And it's then sort of pushed you back towards, okay, well, what can I do in order to help people before it gets there, which I think is amazing. That's really commendable.
A fight as well. Sorry, I'm just thinking out loud here. Am I jumping the gun here, Tom, on the schedule?
No, it's okay. We're just chatting a bit about
with it.
What brought Elizabeth to.
Okay, hopefully I'm not jumping the gun. But with the fight thing, I suppose, because I suppose like a fight has a victor. There's like you're sort of in it to win a fight, but conflict, I don't necessarily feel would necessarily need a victor. It's more about like, I don't know, management, maybe. It's just interesting. It's interesting to hear the different stages of what that can look like.
Well, the way that I view it is that what we really want in our relationships actually is not to have conflict. What we've got is differences, because we all come from different backgrounds. When two people get together, a lot of the work that I do in my counseling sessions is to look at people's backgrounds. What were their role models? What were their parents' relationships like? Do they come from a family where there's been divorce, or are their parents still together? How do their parents treat each other? And we all come from very different backgrounds, and we bring that together. So when two people get together, they have differences. Mm-hmm. It's how do you manage those differences so that it does not become a fight or a conflict. It becomes a recognition of the differences, understanding what the differences are. How do you bring those differences together in a healthy way? So it's maybe thinking more in terms of differences being natural, and how you manage those differences, and also how you manage that both sides' needs are being met, both sides' boundaries are not being invaded, how you do all that in a healthy way so it doesn't become conflict, fighting, arguments. We're all human beings. We will always have a day where we don't have the patience for that, and we'll have, we'll be irritable or have an argument or whatever. But what you're aiming for is to have as little of that fighting type conflict as you can in a relationship.
Mm. Interesting stuff.
Sorry, Tom, I thought you were going to say something else there. So that's, I think when you were talking there, Elizabeth, I had an image of a school popping into my head of like everybody coming from different backgrounds, different cultures, different sort of rules, different understandings and interpretations, and then having to make all of that work, right? Which is why schools are such strange places. But then think of that in a relationship context where, you've got one person who's grown up here like this, another person who's grown up here like this, and we have these needs and these have these needs, and this is what I want and this is what I like and this is what I don't like, and then trying to fuse all that together into one, and just to expect that to be seamless, and it just feels very unrealistic, actually, from what you're saying.
Well, I think it's really interesting that you've made a very good point there, that we all just we meet someone, we fall in love, don't we? And we sort of quite often fall into living with them, especially these days. It's not so much like the old days where you worked out that you were getting married. You sort of fall into living together. And you do just expect it to work. You've got two people coming together. And what people don't do, which I really would recommend any of your listeners who are thinking of moving in with people, talk to each other about what are your expectations when we move in together? How do you see that it's going to go? I think people are much better these days about talking about, do you want children or do you not want children? They talk more about those big things. But what are the expectations? Are we both going to work? What happens, who does what around the house? You don't have those conversations. And I think you hit the nail on the head there, Tom, in saying that we expect it to just be seamless. And of course it's not. And that's why it's interesting, Tom, the other Tom, saying that you've been married 2 months. Often that first year of being married can be really, really difficult for people, because it is trying to get that to work together. Two very different people with different expectations. You probably haven't even talked about your expectations. and you've got to, and finding something that works.
And if it's not talked about, Elizabeth, that comes out in other ways, doesn't it? I'm thinking about my own relationship, and those nights where I'd be like, "Oh, the boys are playing Call of Duty. Is it all right if I just sneak upstairs and play Call of Duty?" And my wife's like, or who was perhaps my girlfriend at the time, would have said, "Oh, I thought we were going to do something together. I thought we were going to watch that show." You know, and you think, "Oh my gosh!" Like now I feel like I'm letting people down. I'm letting either my partner down, or I'm letting my friends down. But if all that's kind of ironed out somewhere, well, there'll have to be some flexibility, of course. But if it's all kind of set up in some way, shape or form, then it can kind of set that expectation.
Yeah, it is about expectations causes a lot of problems. Yeah, no, exactly, Tom. That's it.
Sorry, Tom. I often also feel that my expectation, let's say, I'm not even necessarily conscious of it. It's just how I presume this will be the case. So I've got to do some work to bring that subconscious into the conscious and able to articulate it to the other person. Otherwise, we're going to be sort of angry at each other and we don't really know why. But because I've gone to play COD and she was thinking we're going to watch a film or whatever it is, I think being able to check in with yourself to identify some of your expectations. And then
that is exactly right. You've hit the nail on the head, Tom. It is working out. Lots of people have not worked out what their own needs are. They haven't worked out what their own expectations are. They haven't worked out what's reasonable. Is it reasonable that Tom goes off and plays COD with his friends, or is it not reasonable? Is it reasonable that she wants to, I don't know, spend time? What's reasonable? What are your needs? What people haven't even worked that out for themselves, leave alone got the other person to understand it. So that is such a good place to start. Sit and think of your own needs first. Mm-hmm. And they change over time, as you'll know, Tom, with having your son. Once you've got children, there suddenly needs change and expectations change. So you have to go throughout your life. You have different needs and expectations, but it is identifying them first for yourself.
My PlayStation hasn't been on in months. Since that child has turned up. I think it's been on maybe twice. I think my friends have set up different WhatsApp groups, either that or no one's playing, but I don't think that's true. I think I'm just being hidden. But yeah, so exactly, needs are changing, and actually, do I have the mental capacity to do it? I'm not sure. But anyway, so I suppose I just want to think about this kind of leads us neatly into the next bit then, Elizabeth. This idea of conflict, I think, is something that can come up if there is a incongruence within expectations of each other. So I just wonder, when does a lack of communication become a conflict?
Well, what tends to then happen is, for example, in your example, Tom, is when you're thinking, oh, but all my friends are playing and, why can't I, and whatever. And it's at that point when you identify the irritation, that should be the signal to you, and obviously conversely to your wife when she's got the irritation of, I thought we were doing something else. It's identifying the irritation first. And what I then say is very good, a good technique that has worked with a lot of my couples is what we then tend to do, which causes the conflict and the fight and the argument, is you will say, oh, but it's not fair. My PlayStation hasn't been on since, the baby was born, and you throw it in. And she's thinking, but what about me? I've been looking after the baby. And then you're butting up against each other.
So when you were speaking there, I thought, oh my God, I'm making myself out there as the victim. Like, I haven't had my needs met. And yet that's not the way I should be going.
I'll never take sides, Tom. Let me say I never take sides.
Great. No,
everyone has got their point of view. But what is a good technique is once you've identified that irritation, you don't throw it in at that moment, but you say to your wife, you will say, there's something I'd like to talk about. When can we do it? And you timetable a meeting. I'm all in favor of treating our relationships far more business-like than we do. What would you do if it was a business? If you were having the podcast with Tom and there was something that irritated you, I can't imagine it, but if it happened, you would say, Tom, I think we need to have a chat about this. That didn't work well for us. I feel this. What do you think? What do you feel? How can we resolve it? So it's scheduling the appointment when there are no distractions, no children, no PlayStation, no mobile phones, but timetabling it. That gets both people's minds thinking, right, I've got to think about this. Then you sit together and you say, well, this didn't work well for me. I was feeling a bit irritated. How do you feel about it? And then they say how they feel, you say how you feel. How do we resolve it?
I actually love the idea of having a business meeting with an agenda and a time frame and some action points and some
Yeah,
reflections. I suppose
yeah,
if you did that, I don't know, once a week or something for an
yeah.
hour or something, because in the process of doing that, you also free up the rest of the week where you're not going to say things sort of out of turn. We could sort of say, like, I haven't actually got the space to talk about this and this right
Yes,
now, but
yes.
definitely on Saturday when we do our thing for sure, can we pop it on our agenda and come back to it? And you free up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And what you're then saying to the other person, if they're annoyed with you, what you're saying to the other person is, I am willing to listen to what you have to say then. Let's not do it when we're perhaps both, and call it. Say, actually, I'm just feeling irritated at the moment, so I don't think this is a good time to talk about it, but let's talk about it on Saturday. I love the idea of a weekly, especially when you've got children and you're doing, or everyone's so busy these days. It's what are we doing next week, and how are we? A bit like the check-ins, the check-ins when how are you? How are we feeling? How is our relationship? Good idea.
I really like that idea of postponing it as well, because I don't know about you, Tom, but in my therapy, I'm always talking about the wise self and how, if we're being super wise, then these two parts of my brain are joined up. I'm being both very rational and very emotional all at the same time. I can, feel emotion, but I can also act effectively and make effective decisions. But when I'm triggered, i.e., there's some conflict or something that's irritated me, then that will disconnect ever so gently, and at which point my emotional mind will then take over, and I'm not thinking straight then at that point. I'm going to say something that perhaps I will regret later, or I'll act in a way that I wish I hadn't, and I just won't be as effective as I need to be. So that idea of postponing just allows space for soothing, to allow that wise self to reconnect, at which point then I can probably be much more effective in that business meeting, Elizabeth, than I would be if you just called me in immediately, at which point I'm losing my head.
Exactly. Exactly. I really like that. You're talking about the two parts of the brain. I hadn't thought of it like that before. I love that.
I think relationships are such a big deal, for all of us. Like, they're all basically probably always on the radar and in quite a significant way. And then if you think about the amount of time we put into our work, for example, and how organized we are with that, and proactive and reflective and all those sorts of things, do we really apply that to arguably something of equal or not greater importance than what you do for a living? Like, generally the answer would be no. I mean, I'm definitely guilty of that. I know what all my bookkeeping's doing, and I know what my tax bill's doing, and I know what my appointment's saying. Have I checked in with my partner about X, Y, and Z? No, I haven't. And that is one of the most useful assets I think I could probably ever have, is a
It's your
meaningful committed.
relationship.
Yeah.
Well, that's a good point you make there, Tom, because I have couples who say, I just didn't have time for that check-in this week, or whatever they call it. I didn't have all that. I was really irritated by that, and I said, well, did you get together and talk about that? No, we just didn't have time. And I think, well, how much time do you spend arguing? How much time are you feeling annoyed? How much? And if you think of it like that, some couples spend a lot of time arguing.
Yeah, I bet. So is it kind of an acceptable, say that's what you set up with some people you're working with, you've got your Saturday morning business/relationship meeting. Is it acceptable to, on Tuesday when tensions get a bit hot, to ask them to postpone that? Or does that ever run into the risk of them feeling invalidated or unheard in that moment, do you think?
Well, I would ask them, and say, I think, as I said before, it's good to point out, don't think this is a good time. You can say, I'm feeling irritable, or I feel that things are building between us, anything like that. And let's just call it. but I really want to talk about that. Or if you feel that she's got irritated by something and you can feel it, you can say, I can feel the irritation, but I don't know that this would be a good time to talk about it. When would you like to talk about it? Shall we just have a think about what's going on here and then come back? Ask her. It doesn't have to be that Saturday morning. It's say, when shall we have the meeting about it? And if an issue comes up, it's good to have that regular one, but it's when an issue comes up, you say, something's happening here that I'm not happy about. I think we need to talk about it. When shall we do it? And you timetable it, just like you would if you were in a business.
And what's popping into my mind here is this idea of postponement. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are thinking, yeah, but in that moment, I'm just stewing then. I'm like, oh, I've got to wait till Saturday to talk about it. So I suppose, I'm thinking I'd be in the same way. I'd be like, no, I need to sort this now. And that's just my obsessive compulsive mind, right? Is I need to sort this now. I need to fix this now. So, thinking about this, almost like, Tom, what we do with kind of worry management, we worry about them, if it's a hypothetical futuristic worry, we postpone that. Let's not act in haste. So we then postpone it. So we would always encourage our clients to think about refocusing that attention, self-soothing, self-care. So I don't know if would you recommend the same thing to your clients, Elizabeth, or would you ask them to do anything differently once they've agreed to postpone things?
No, it's all the same principles of but what I think what you want in a healthy relationship is you've got that underlying understanding that when the irritation arises, there is danger. You can have this conversation, obviously. When the irritation arises, there is danger that there'll be an argument. There's danger that people are going to say things they don't mean. Also, you haven't had time to even work through for yourself what has annoyed you. So in a healthy relationship, you start to have that trust in each other that, danger signals, this isn't a good time for us, is it, to talk about this? And you each know it. If you're in a more conflicted relationship where there's a lot of resentment and everything, you could have a partner who says, well, I just don't want to leave it. Then you have to do the soothing of them in terms of, I'm not dismissing your feelings. I really want to hear what you've got to say. I'm just nervous that if we talk now, we're going to have an argument about it. I really want to hear what you've got to say. I know that something is worrying you. I really want to understand what it is that's worrying you. I really want to understand. And I think if we're arguing, I won't be able to hear it. Something like that. It's soothing the other person, as in, you're not dismissing them. You're not saying you don't want to hear it. You're saying you really want to hear it, but it's dangerous now.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Because also I find if I come home from work and I've given it all that day, and then you get stuck in traffic and you didn't have time for lunch and you get through the door and you're just absolutely broken, as often is the case after a long day of being at work for anyone, that is a danger zone for me. I'm a minefield. I'm an absolute minefield. I need an hour. I need some food. I need to maybe have a shower, and then we can speak. But if it happens then, I'm going to be blowing up all over the place. And that's a really valuable bit of advice. Don't set yourself up for failure almost.
Well, that almost goes back a little bit to the expectations or the agreement between you. Does your wife understand that about you? And I'm sure she's got her own needs as well.
Yeah.
That's one of your needs. One of your needs is to come in and have that quiet, have that downtime. Then you can come out and deal with things. It's having that, you have that conversation with her and say, this is one of my needs. Is it all right if I have that sort of thing? Can we factor that into our lives? And then she will have, what does she need? Yeah. That's coming back to the needs, identifying your needs and agreeing together how each of your needs will be met. It's got to be balanced. All needs have got to be met. Yeah. But hopefully, again, if you are showing that you are really wanting to meet her needs, she'll be more inclined to want to meet your needs for the health of the relationship.
Yeah. It's very common sense, this. It's very, very useful.
It's just It is just common sense.
But it's not thought of, it's common sense,
No.
but it doesn't pop into my mind, because as you were saying, Tom, I'm not always acting in. Sorry, it's turning into a therapy session for myself. I am aware of that. I'll try and get it off that in just a sec. But if we're not being wise in that moment, then and I think to apply that thinking, apply all that rationality, and to agree in the relationship, two-way street, invaluable. I can see that just being completely invaluable.
People don't do it. Like, I remember early on in my career as a therapist, my wife and I were saving up for a mortgage. And so when we moved into with my in-laws, and I remember, I think my wife said something about me being, or someone said something about me being grumpy when I get back from work, and sort of perhaps really doesn't enjoy his job because he's grumpy. But actually, my wife sort of said, well, that's actually, he's kind of processing at that point. But I hadn't communicated that. My wife had very instinctively picked up that that's what I was doing, and kind of recognized that herself, but we didn't talk about that. And my wife sort of knows sometimes as well when I need to just stew or process. But what this is also bringing up for me is this idea of communication styles, Elizabeth, that idea that if I'm arguing, that I'm probably being aggressive. And so is my partner. We're kind of meeting each other with fire, aren't we? So if we're being aggressive, then we're being nobody's needs are being met. I think my needs are being met, but I'm just disregarding everybody else's. But equally, if I'm too passive and I say, yes, okay, let's have that conversation now, then their needs are being met, but mine perhaps aren't. And so it's that willingness to try and be assertive, where I can meet my needs and say, no, look, I hear how important this is to you, but I'm just worried about what will happen if we do this. Can we please postpone? So I hear you, I'm validating you, but I also am hearing myself and I'm validating myself. And I hope you can understand that.
And you're validating the relationship. It won't be healthy for the relationship if we do it now.
Mm-hmm.
The relationship is almost
like a good point. Sorry.
No, carry on.
I was going to say that's a very good point in terms of each person's needs is all that I was going to say, because another thing to bear in mind is when you have these conversations, it's about how we listen to the other person. Like, this is a big joke, isn't it? That, you never listen. But it really is about listening. And I see it when I've got a couple in the room and one is talking and I see the other one. The other one usually is half listening to what's being said, but they are really thinking about, what is my answer going to be? How am I going to defend myself? And so they're not really listening. So quite often I'll say, well, what did you hear he or she was trying to communicate there? Because they don't quite often, they're so busy thinking of the answer or how it's all, but my point is this, that they're not really hearing it. So another good technique is when you have these meetings, it's that you really listen to the other person's point of view, as in, what are they trying to communicate? You don't have to agree with it. It might be a load of rubbish. It doesn't matter. You don't have to have an answer and you don't have to defend yourself. You just have to hear what it is. So that's very, very important. Then when you've got what it is, what they are trying to communicate, you get it across to them. Oh, I hear what you're saying. Another good technique is almost to say, well, what I think you're saying is X, Y, and Z. Is that right? So, for example, going back to your example of playing on the PlayStation, Tom, it's a really good example. Say your wife is saying, I just feel that you should never play on the PlayStation again. That's her point. Now, I'm sure you wouldn't be inclined to agree with that point, but you would say, but you hear the points. You say, so what I'm hearing you saying is you think it would be better if I never played on the PlayStation again. And then another good thing is if that really makes you angry, you think, oh, for heaven's sake, that's so unreasonable. You could say, a good way out of it is say, that's a good point. Let me just think about that one. Not so much in a like the PlayStation, but if it's a serious point, you say, I hear what you're saying. I think you're saying this, but just give me some time to think about it. Again, Tom, that's you getting, like you're saying, you're getting your brain into gear. And then you can either say, well, look, just give me 5 minutes, or you could say, can we come back to it even tomorrow or whatever? So you calm that down. But the point is that you then put across your point of view. I really like to play the PlayStation because it's just my bit of relaxation, or it's, you then put your point that hopefully she hears. And then you say, okay, how do we join these two needs? But it's the listening, really listening without thinking of an answer and without defending. That's really important, because we don't even hear really what the other person is saying.
I have definitely had scenarios like that, not necessarily in my relationship recently, but in therapy, when I've been working with somebody and I've been trying to communicate a message, and all of a sudden they start, perhaps going in a different direction or getting quite upset. And I'm like, whoa, hold on. What did you hear me say then?
Yes.
And they'll say what their interpretation. I said, that's really interesting because my message was actually this.
Yes, that's
so
exactly
because
it.
when we're talking, actually people are in their own minds, aren't they, in their own internal worlds, thinking, oh my gosh, am I going to get better? What's this like? All that kind of stuff, and not really hearing. And in a relationship, it might be like you say, oh, what are they going to say? Are they going to embarrass me in front of the therapist? Are they going to make me out to be the bad guy? Well, how do I come back from this? How do I justify myself?
Exactly. So they're so busy thinking about that, they're not actually hearing. And obviously you would then say to your wife, you would say, well, what's your reasoning behind? Why do you think I shouldn't play on the PlayStation anymore? You explore, like you explore in a counseling session, actually. You explore and you really get to the bottom of what are they trying to communicate.
So them saying, I don't want you to ever go on the PlayStation again, could actually be, I would love it if a few times in a week we've spent more time together in the evening.
Yes, exactly. But they haven't said that. Yes.
Got you. Yeah.
And she may feel, oh, am I being unreasonable that I want him to be with me in the, all those things. So it's really, really exploring and digging. Yeah.
Sorry, no, I'm just saying out loud. I wasn't going to say anything.
Okay. No worries. No worries. Yeah. So I mean, I can definitely relate to this. Times when I've done that, and my wife has said, "Oh, I thought we were going to watch this. I thought we were going to do this," but we didn't actually explicitly say what that was. And this seems like a very therapeutic approach. Therapy approach to this is almost a downward arrow. And so, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
If I go and play on the PlayStation now, what does that bring up for you? What does that mean to you? Well, we don't spend any time together. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So how do we then think about a problem solving that?
Yes.
Go ahead, Tom.
I was just going to say, so one of the questions we had for you, Elizabeth, was why do couples often get stuck in the same arguments? From what we've said, I think we may have answered it slightly in that it's kind of lack of awareness and lack of communication about one's true feelings, and putting that into like a workable shared contract almost for the relationship. Is that the answer to the question? Why do people always get stuck in the same arguments, or is there more to that, do you think?
Well, yeah, but I hate, Tom, to come back to your problem again about the PlayStation, but it's such a good example, because where you could get stuck is that you want to go on the PlayStation and she doesn't want you to, for all these reasons that we've talked about, but they haven't been communicated. So you say, oh, I'm just going on the PlayStation. She says, oh, you're not on that again. And then you go around that same, and one of you, either you give in and don't go on the PlayStation, or she gives in and you go on it, and then resentment builds. And I really do want to emphasize, we do not want resentment in relationship. Resentment kills relationships. Resentment is the biggest killer. So resentment would start. And also, if you did just go on the PlayStation anyway, knowing that she's feeling angry and resentment, you've either got guilt or you've got some. So these are the emotions we don't want.
That's the thing, isn't it? You're not really enjoying it anyway, because you're thinking, someone's downstairs absolutely simmering, resenting the fact that I'm doing this. But you just said a really powerful thing there, that resentment is a killer. So I'm just wondering if it's not addressed. And I know it sounds obvious that all the relationship would end, but let's say the relationship doesn't end at that point. If resentment isn't addressed, how could that then play out? Would that be more arguing, more tension? What could that look like? What do you see?
It can either be the constant sniping at each other. the little digs and knocks, as you're going back to the PlayStation again, are you? That sort of thing. Or no speaking. There will be days of silence, there can be, or the couples live, and this happens quite a lot when people have got children and so they don't want to break up the family, they live separate lives. And they don't communicate anymore, and they just go, one does their life, the other does, and they just live like, they just occupy the home together. Those are the sort of things I see.
Just passing ships, kind of cohabiting.
Yes.
Yeah, interesting.
And with seething resentment underneath, which is so bad for you health-wise as well, as you know.
I suppose that's where, I know we're not going to get into this topic because it's another topic for another time, but affairs and things could easily come from that, where you don't really feel much for your partner anymore and haven't for some time, and you resent them, and all the other things that can come. But that's when it obviously completely, I suppose, breaks down.
Absolutely. Then there is the danger of affairs and betrayal, which is that is another whole different topic, and the work on affairs and betrayal entails a different type of work, which I do a lot. So that's we can do that in another podcast on another day. But you're absolutely right, Tom, in that there is the danger then, if your needs are not being met at home and suddenly someone pops up who appears to be offering all the understanding and meeting your needs, there is a big temptation there. I would always say, please don't do it because it causes so much pain, but you can understand the temptation, the danger.
So it sounds like if we don't kind of approach conflict from this quite mature adult mindset of both of you prioritizing the relationship and wanting the relationship to work, and therefore taking the necessary but difficult steps to help that along, if we don't do that, we run into the risk of like resentment building and the stonewalling I think you were mentioning there, which to me just sounds hellish, just completely unlivable circumstance for a relationship to blossom. So I guess we can conclude from that there's two types of conflict. One is very unhealthy and one is very healthy. And I suppose what we don't get to do is choose a life without conflict. It's which poison do you pick almost, which path are you going to take, healthy conflict or unhealthy conflict?
Well, I think in an ideal world, I don't think we could ever manage to every day never have any conflict because we are human beings. But in a really ultra healthy relationship, you shouldn't really have conflict, because what you feel is the feeling arises and you stop it before it's conflict. It is difference at that stage. At that stage, it's difference. But how are we going to manage this difference so it doesn't turn into conflict between us?
I think that's a really key point, is it's difference until it's not. It's difference until we resent it so much that it becomes that conflict. And it is kind of raising what Ron said in our last episode, which was that there is always going to be pain, and you can get to choose which pain you want to pick, whether you pick the pain of not discussing this, not managing this, and then ongoing conflict and resentment, or whether you pick the awkwardness, the pain of the awkwardness of saying, would you mind if we put that on our agenda to talk about, and bringing that up and raising that, which is obviously a much more healthier way. So creating this adult space, and if we don't create that very reflective adult space, then there is a huge risk of further damage by the sounds of it.
I think we should just hone in on that just one more time, because I think that's so valuable. It's difference first. It's a misalignment of some just desires or wants or expectations. That's not conflict. And it won't be conflict if you can nip that in the bud through the proper communication channels and attitudes, I suppose, to each other's needs.
Yeah.
And then if not, conflict. And if not, then the circumstances we've talked about, ultimately, which could end up in a horrible fight, which hopefully we can avoid that at all costs. But it's very interesting. Even the language, I imagine just saying to your partner, like, I think we're experiencing some differences, is such a non-combative thing to say. How could anyone be defensive about that?
Well, I just also think sorry to cut in here, Tom. I also think it's a very cultural thing. Like, we're meant to just keep calm, carry on. I mean, for generations before, people have been unhappy in relationships and just kept going because it's expected that they don't cause issues. And this is my husband, this is what husbands do, or this is my wife, and this is what wives do. And so this willingness to almost kind of break those cultural keep calm and carry on approaches, isn't to say, look, these are my needs, what are your needs? And have that willingness to go down that route, to set the boundaries. I mean, it makes so much sense to me. It's almost like if everything's laid out on the table, you can't be hurt, right?
Exactly. But I think the point that you picked up, Tom, about the fact that it's about our relationship. And that's what I do in my counselling sessions. I say to my couples, I'm not counselling each of you, actually, I'm counselling your relationship. Because if you make it about your relationship, then that can sort of cool down that feeling of, oh, you're just trying to get your own way sort of thing. No, how do we want our relationship to be good?
And that would also make me feel less attacked as well, I think, because I think I would naturally go in defensive to that environment and think, gosh, we've got here, how much of this is me? How much of this do I need to defend myself? So that idea that this isn't about the individuals directly, it's about the relationship and the individuals within that relationship and individual needs within that relationship would just probably really help me engage as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I once heard it explained, the corpus callosum is this thing that joins the two brain hemispheres. It's like a little separate little entity. You should think of like you're the left, they're the right, and the relationship is this corpus callosum, and you're both inherently in that, but it is almost its own entity in itself, and it's that part you're respecting. The bit that conjoins you is the part that you're trying to work towards there.
That is so good, because also the two sides of the brain are different. They do.
Yes,
they've got different functions, and it's how well they work together, really. So I really like that image.
Yeah. Brilliant. That's really useful. All of that has been incredibly useful. Thank you.
So, Elizabeth, just conscious of the time here, and I want to just sort of make sure we cover everything. So, we've talked a bit about what the conflicts are, and I just want to be very clear to our listeners that the conflicts we're talking about here are the everyday conflicts. I think Elizabeth said at the outset that there are bigger topics that she sees in her work, like addiction and affairs and betrayal. And Elizabeth has very kindly said that that's a whole different episode. So perhaps we'll come back for one of those. But if anybody is, Elizabeth, thinking, oh my gosh, I'm noticing this, I'm noticing we don't talk, and okay, this sounds like a really good idea to kind of set this business meeting up. Is there anything else that you would, if they were your clients, is there anything else you'd advise them to do, or any other steps they could take?
What do you mean, like any other just sort of general tips and things? Well, I think one of the biggest ones is please sit down and work out who does what in the house. That I hear over and over and over again. Please sit down. What jobs need to be done? And who is doing what? So you don't have the constant niggle of, could you just do this? Or you haven't done that? Or who does what? And obviously you then got to factor in who is working outside of the home, how many hours, what is reasonable. But again, that's like a big business decision, isn't it? If you were working in an office, you'd work out who does what. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't say, oh, do you think you could just do the I don't know, the podcast today?
Yeah. And again, my wife would hate that. She would hate to do a podcast. But,
exactly.
But when it comes to that, again, the word resentment just pings around my head. The idea that I go downstairs and see this might not have been done, and my irritation, if not then managed, becomes resentment / conflict. So the idea that actually those boundaries are already preset. And it's actually reminded me, do you remember, Tom, we did the episode last series with Becky when we were talking about accelerators and brakes, those kind of things that encourage intimacy in relationships. Elizabeth, the idea that actually for many people, being respected through jobs and housework and chores actually encourage closeness within relationships as well. Yeah. So that's kind of popping into my mind as well.
Oh, well, respect is one of the biggest ones, isn't it? And liking the other person. And the trouble is, if you get into a fighting type situation, you're not going to like the other person. And then after a while, you're not going to respect them. So it's when those things go, and then intimacy goes. You're not going to feel that you want to be intimate with somebody you don't like or respect.
Mm-hmm. Makes so much sense. It's so multi-layered, isn't it? For something so simple as making sure we know who's doing what around the house. It's it's amazing.
It's
just
very
how complicated.
Simple. I cannot tell you how many sessions I hear about the socks that have not been picked up.
Right. Yeah. So, guys, anybody who's listening, please pick up your socks. If you spot a bowl in the sink, pop it in the dishwasher.
Oh, what the dish! I have met so many conversations around the dishwasher, how it should be. How it should be.
Honestly, the dishwasher is. I might as well just avoid the dishwasher at all costs. I fill the dishwasher. I think it's perfect. My wife comes in and goes, oh, and then she's rearranging it. I'm like, what is wrong with this? Like, what could possibly be? Like, is there a class that's taught of how to fill a dishwasher? Because
I think it's Tetris. If you're good at Tetris,
I just get as much in as I can.
But then that again, you're giving so many good examples. That again is wonderful. If that is a constant feeling, then should it be that she loads the dishwasher? It's simple things like that. It's looking at what is causing the irritation and how do we find a way around it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, inevitably, my wife does that anyway because I fill the dishwasher. I think it's perfect. I think it's the Michelangelo Sistine Chapel painting of dishwasher filling, and my wife comes in and goes, "Oh."
I've heard this many times.
Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, I think it's just really highlighting how complicated our dynamics are, but how very simple things can contribute to improving that.
It's very simple, actually, really.
It's almost it's like an accumulation of the little things, it sounds like. Not that the dishwasher isn't little, but when you do the dishwasher every day, forever, suddenly it's 20 minutes of your day that is actually, needs to
irritation.
Be... Yeah, 20 minutes of my day.
20 minutes a day of irritation is not good for...
Definitely not, because then you're a bit annoyed.
Have the conversation. I think we should sit down and have a conversation about the dishwasher. Yeah. How are we going to resolve this so it's not irritation?
Great.
Very useful, that. Very useful.
Good.
Well, thank you, Tom, for all these wonderful examples. But they are the little things. It's the top of the toothpaste that destroys a marriage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. Good. Elizabeth, before I move us along, are there any other top tips you wanted to share with our audience? It's okay if not. I just want to make sure you've had space to get everything.
Yeah, no, I think those are two main everyday things.
Fantastic.
To think about. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your expertise to this point. Is it all right if we change things around a little bit, Elizabeth, and put you in the hot seat?
Right, okay.
Okay, so this is, for anybody listening, we've been called therapists in the hot seat for a while without any real understanding as to why that is. So we've come up with a section where we put our guests and sometimes ourselves in the hot seat, and we're going to just ask ourselves quick-fire questions. So where you can, Elizabeth, if you can just answer these questions with one word, if not one word, a sentence, whatever. If there's anything you don't want to answer or you don't feel you can on the spot, just say pass. Okay. And Tom, if you want to answer them as well, you can. I know he's quite keen to do this one.
Very opinionated as well. So.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
Elizabeth, tea or coffee?
Tea, please.
Okay, we don't actually get it. It's just a
hypothetical cup of tea, I'm afraid. But do enjoy.
Tea. Okay, thank you. Pick one word to describe conflict.
Fighting.
What's your favorite relationship book or podcast?
Too many for that. I'm sorry, too many for that.
Too many. Are there any books where you regularly point your clients to?
I do. For my this is more for betrayal. There's a very good book entitled, and I don't know if I'm going to get the exact title, but it's something like How to Help Your Spouse Get Over an Affair. Very small book, really.
Okay. That's interesting. Thank you so much. What's the most underrated relationship advice?
Underrated?
Yeah.
Pass. I don't understand the question. I'm sorry. Underrated.
Yeah, so if it was underrated as in what actually seems so simple but is so powerful, what do people kind of overlook or dismiss that they should be?
Oh, I see. Sorry. Well, I think sorry, I can't really answer in one word, but really what we've been talking about, it's so simple, but people don't do it.
Okay.
Simplicity.
Having a meeting.
Yeah, I fully back
Pick
that.
up the socks. No.
Yeah, pick up the socks. There you go. Perfect. What's your go-to self-care ritual, Elizabeth, after a difficult session?
For me, I have to spend time on my own. I have to go, and I'm one of those people that people take my energy, and so I have to go and sit quietly, music or calm on my own. Gardening maybe would be a one word. In the garden.
Great, thank you. What's more powerful in a relationship, love or respect?
Gosh. I mean, they're so interlinked, but I would say, let's say love. Let's say love. That
sounds so lovely. Let's say love.
Let's say love.
Thank you. And what's your therapy superpower? What are people coming to you for?
Again, I can't really answer in one word, but I think people come to, maybe to be listened, to be heard.
Fantastic. Thank you. And what do you enjoy the most about your work at the moment?
Just that feeling of how, that when you see people go, when they finish and they say, actually, I think we're all right for a bit, and it has really helped us. And you see the energy between them has changed. Mm-hmm. It's wonderful. It really is really good.
I can really get behind that, because I'm not a relationship counsellor, but there have been times when I have been in the centre we used to work in, Elizabeth, and people have been, I'm kind of just waiting for a room to free up for me to go in or something like that. And I see couples leaving and there's laughter and communication.
Yeah, it's wonderful when that
happens. Which is really nice to see. And it's obvious that session's been really helpful.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. Sorry for putting you in the hot seat there. There were some difficult ones, weren't there? But thank you so much for having a good go at those. Tom, do you want to answer any of those questions?
Yeah. Can you do it on me?
Yeah. You ready?
Yeah.
Tom, tea or coffee?
Tea. Easy.
I don't get it. One word to describe conflict.
Necessary.
Necessary?
Yeah, but I feel I've actually rethought my instant answer on that because of this session, because we can talk about it in terms of differences, but I would say necessary still. Okay,
thank you very much. Favorite relationship book or podcast?
I don't really know any because I don't do it, but I have my favorite therapy book.
Yeah?
The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris.
Very good, very good. I won't ask you the relationship ones. What's your go-to self-care ritual after a tough session?
I'm also a massive introvert, like Elizabeth. It sounds like you are as well. Gaming.
Gaming. Great. So your PlayStation's well and truly on. Okay. What's more powerful in a relationship, love or respect?
So hard. Before this, I thought respect, because I don't know. I honestly couldn't answer it. I mean, Elizabeth said love. I don't know. I'll say respect just to encourage the conversation to go in two ways.
I wouldn't spend any time on it. I would go with love, because I think without love, it'd be sad if we respected each other but we didn't love each other. I don't know. It's kind of, I'd have to fall with love on that one, if it was me. Tom, what is your therapy superpower?
Empathy.
Okay. Empathy, man.
Also my own detriment, but for the clients, I think it's empathy.
Okay. Thank you. And what lights you up about your work right now? What are you enjoying most?
I'm really enjoying, I use my favorite formulation with clients, which is the Melanie Fennell one for low self-esteem. Mm-hmm. And I'm applying some ACT magic to that. And almost, I think I'm not the first, I'm not pioneering anything, but in my own way, I sort of am, and applying ACT techniques to a sort of a CBT prescribed methodology. And I'm finding it's working wonderfully for people. Really, really.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. So mixing those modalities, adding in some different flavors, and yeah. Excellent. Good work. Those are the questions, Tom. There are more specific relationship ones, but I'd feel it'd be a bit unfair to ask you those. So, Elizabeth, your turn. It's come to the part of the podcast where you set Tom and I a homework. something for us to maybe try over the week, something to do that we can maybe reflect on at the start of our next podcast or the next time you join us? Do you have any ideas?
Well, what I thought about was more to do with your relationships, because you're each married, and it's something we haven't actually really touched on today. But it's about being grateful for the other person. So the homework is for you each to go away and write down 10 things that you are grateful for from your partner. And also think about whether you communicate how you are grateful for those things. Do you communicate it to them? I bet you don't.
I bet I won't take that bet.
No, and I think this is going to sound so cheesy, but I think it kind of comes down to that language of love, right? The idea that I think I do, but I do it my own way. But my wife will say, "Can I just have a hug?" I'm like, "Oh my gosh, yes, of course. Like, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I just want a hug." I'm like, "Oh, right, okay." So I've communicated my love in other ways, whether it's through doing or through giving or whatever. And actually, yeah, it's not talked about overtly. It's more covert, I think. So really good.
Exactly.
I think I can't do that.
I don't want to open up a whole new thing, but that love language thing is a big source of conflict, because for exactly the reasons you've just said.
Thank you very
People
much.
Don't hear it. The other person is desperately showing their love in a certain way, but the other person, that's not love to them.
Doesn't see it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, maybe another episode on that, Elizabeth, at some point. We'll have to get you back for multiple episodes.
Yes.
Okay. So look, I think that neatly brings us to the end of our podcast. So, Elizabeth, I just want to say a huge thank you for coming along and for sharing your wisdom. It's been amazing to hear your story and what pulled you into the work you do, and about, the tips you've given, hopefully for, those that you give in therapy, but also those that you've given to our listeners, seem really invaluable. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been really good.
I feel really quite invigorated and inspired and a lot more knowledgeable on relationships after that short time with you. So yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. And thank you everybody so much for listening to our episode. If you did enjoy our episode, please do make sure that you give us a like on Instagram or a follow on Instagram. You can subscribe to us on YouTube. And we really appreciate likes on Spotify as well. If you can like our podcast, that hits the Spotify algorithm and then gets us out to more and more people. So we really appreciate it if you take the time to do that. Please do get in touch as well if you have any topics or that you'd like us to cover, or questions that you'd like to ask, then please do. Other than that, there's nothing left to say apart from we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, and wishing you all well. Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.